The drive to her office took 20 minutes through empty streets lined with shuttered factories and broken streetlights. Millbrook had seen better days, but Lisa's agency occupied a gleaming glass building on the edge of town, a monument to new money in a landscape of old rust. I parked across the street and looked up at the third floor, where warm light spilled from the windows of Sterling and Associates. My heart actually fluttered with anticipation. When was the last time I'd surprised her? When was the last time we'd done anything spontaneous? The security guard at the front desk was asleep, his head tilted back, mouth open like a fish. I slipped past him and took the elevator to the third floor, clutching my peace offerings. The office was quiet except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of voices. I followed the voices down a hallway lined with motivational posters and awards for advertising excellence. The voices were coming from the corner office, Derek Sterling's office, the boss man himself. I'd met him a few times at company parties, a silver-haired, smooth talker who wore suits that cost more than my monthly salary. I was about to knock when I heard Lisa's laugh. Not her polite professional laugh, but the one she used to reserve for me, the one that made her sound 20 years old again. "Derek, we shouldn't be doing this here," I heard her say. "The cleaning crew isn't due for another hour," came Derek's voice, low and confident. "Besides, I've been thinking about this all day." Something cold settled in my chest. I stepped closer to the partially open door and peered inside. Lisa was sitting on Derek's desk, her skirt hiked up, her blouse unbuttoned. She spotted me immediately and walked over, her heels clicking on the sticky floor. Even in this dive, she looked like money. Perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having to check your bank balance. "Tom Patterson," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "We met at the Christmas party 2 years ago." I remember. I studied her face, looking for signs of the bitterness I'd expected from a woman scorned. Instead, she seemed almost amused. "You're my mysterious text friend?" Guilty. She signaled the bartender for a drink. "Vodka tonic, top shelf," she called out, then turned back to me. "I suppose you're wondering why I'm here." The thought had crossed my mind. "Because Derek Sterling destroyed my marriage, and now he's destroying yours, and because I have information you need." The bartender brought her drink, and she took a sip before continuing. "Derek has a pattern, Tom. He targets wives of blue-collar workers, mechanics, construction workers, electricians, women who feel trapped in small-town life and dream of something bigger." "How many?" I asked. "You're number 4 that I know of." The number hit me like a punch to the gut. 4 marriages? 4 that ended. There were others where the husbands either didn't find out or were smart enough to fight back before it went too far. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. "This is Rebecca Chen. Her husband was a plumber. Derek convinced her she was destined for bigger things, got her promoted to senior account manager, then dropped her when the next opportunity came along." I studied the photo. Pretty woman, early 30s, with the same hungry look I'd seen in Lisa's eyes lately. "I never meant for it to happen like this." "I know," I said, and I did. Lisa wasn't evil, just weak. She'd been offered something shiny and new, and she'd grabbed it without thinking about the cost. But Derek Sterling was different. He'd known exactly what he was doing, exactly whose life he was destroying, and he'd done it before. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight," I said. "Tomorrow we can start the paperwork." "Tom, wait." Lisa stood up, reaching for me. "Maybe we could try counseling? Maybe—" "Lisa," I stopped her with a look. "It's over. We both know it. Let's just try to end it with some dignity." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I really am sorry." "I know," I said again. "So am I." I went to the guest room and closed the door, then pulled out Sandra's business card. I stared at it for a long time before making my decision. I typed out a text. "I'm ready to hear your plan." The response came back immediately. "Tomorrow, my house, 2 p.m. Come ready for war." I deleted both messages and tried to sleep, but my mind was racing. Derek Sterling had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. Sandra's house was everything I'd expected from a woman who divorced a successful advertising executive. Sprawling, modern, and decorated with the kind of ruthless good taste that screamed money. She answered the door in yoga pants and a designer t-shirt, looking like she'd just stepped out of a magazine ad for wealthy divorcees. "Right on time," she said, leading me through a living room that probably cost more than I made in 5 years. "Coffee?" "Sure." She poured from an espresso machine that looked like it belonged on a spaceship, then gestured for me to sit at a granite kitchen island that could have served as a landing strip. "So," she said, settling across from me with her own cup, "how did the conversation with Lisa go?" "She wants a divorce. Derek's offered her a job in Chicago." Sandra's smile was predatory. "Of course he has. It's part of the pattern. Promise them a bigger life, then isolate them from their support systems. What happens after that?" "Derek gets bored and moves on to the next target. The women are left with nothing. No job, no husband, no home. Derek's very good at making sure there are no loose ends that can come back to haunt him." I thought about the photos Sandra had shown me, women who'd looked just like Lisa, hungry for something more than their small-town lives could offer. "What's your plan?" Sandra pulled out a tablet and showed me a detailed timeline. "Derek's weakness is his ego. He thinks he's untouchable because he's rich and connected. But every predator has vulnerabilities." She swiped to a financial document. "Derek's been skimming money from client accounts to fund his lifestyle. Not enough to trigger an audit, but enough to add up over time. I estimate he's stolen about $200,000 over the past 3 years. Why haven't you reported him?" "Because theft charges require proof that would hold up in court. What I have is circumstantial, suspicious patterns, unexplained expenses, but nothing definitive." She smiled. "But we're not going to court, Tom. We're going to destroy him in the arena where he's most vulnerable." "Which is?" "His reputation. Derek's business depends on trust. His clients need to believe he's ethical, reliable, professional. If that trust disappears, so does his livelihood." She showed me another document, a list of Derek's biggest clients, their contact information, and detailed notes about their relationships with the agency. Phase 1 is exposure. We're going to make sure everyone in Derek's professional and personal circle knows exactly what kind of man he is. Photos, recordings, testimonials from his previous victims. That's not illegal? Truth is an absolute defense against slander charges. Everything we're going to share is documented fact. I studied the list. Some of the names I recognized: local business owners, politicians, even a few minor celebrities who'd moved to the area for the small-town charm. Phase 2, Sandra continued, is isolation. Once Derek's reputation is destroyed, his clients will abandon him. His business partners will distance themselves. His social circle will evaporate. And Phase 3? Sandra's smile turned cold. Phase 3 is personal. Derek has been using his position and resources to manipulate vulnerable women for years. It's time he faced some consequences. She showed me a final document, a detailed dossier on Derek's business practices, personal habits, and psychological profile. Derek Sterling is a narcissist with sociopathic tendencies. He genuinely believes he's superior to everyone around him, which makes him predictable. He'll try to fight back, but he'll do it in ways that only make him look worse. I closed the tablet and looked at Sandra. "Why are you doing this? Really?" "Because Derek Sterling destroyed my life, and I want him to pay. Because he's going to keep destroying families until someone stops him. And because I have the resources and motivation to see it through. What do you need from me?" "Access. You're still married to Lisa, which means you have legitimate reasons to be around Derek and the agency. You can gather information, document his behavior, maybe even provoke him into making mistakes." "Provoke him how?" Sandra's smile was sharp. "Derek's used to dealing with broken men who slink away in shame. He's never faced someone who fought back strategically. We're going to get under his skin, make him angry, force him to show his true colors to people who matter." I thought about it for a long moment. What Sandra was proposing wasn't illegal, but it wasn't exactly ethical either. It was warfare, pure and simple. What happens to Lisa in all this? Lisa made her choice. She chose Derek over you, ambition over loyalty. Whatever happens to her is a consequence of that choice. She's still my wife. For now. But Tom, you need to understand, Lisa isn't going to come out of this unchanged. Derek's pattern is to discard his conquests once they've served their purpose. She's going to get hurt either way. The question is whether Derek faces any consequences for the damage he causes. I finished my coffee and stood up. I need to think about this. Of course, but don't think too long. Derek's already planning his next move, and once Lisa's in Chicago, it'll be much harder to build a case against him. She walked me to the door, then handed me a burner phone. If you decide to move forward, use this to contact me. And Tom, whatever you decide, be careful. Derek Sterling is more dangerous than he looks. I drove home through streets that looked the same, but felt different. Like I was seeing my town through new eyes. Millbrook had always been a small place where everyone knew everyone else's business, but I was starting to realize how much business I'd been blind to. Lisa's car was gone when I got home. She'd left a note on the kitchen table. Gone to file divorce papers. I'll be staying at Angela's until we figure out the details. I'm sorry it ended this way. I crumbled up the note and threw it away, then sat at the kitchen table where we'd eaten breakfast together for 15 years. The house felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of it. My phone rang. It was Frank from the gym. "You coming in today?" he asked. "You look like you could use some time with the heavy bag." "Yeah," I said. "I'll be there in an hour." "Good. And Tom, whatever you're thinking about doing, make sure it's something you can live with afterward." I stared at the burner phone Sandra had given me. Frank was right. Whatever I decided to do next, I'd have to live with the consequences. But I'd also have to live with the consequences of doing nothing. Derek Sterling had destroyed 4 marriages that Sandra knew about, and probably more that she didn't. He was a predator who used his position and wealth to manipulate vulnerable women, then discarded them when he got bored. Lisa had made her choice, but she'd made it based on lies and manipulation. Derek had promised her a life he had no intention of giving her, just like he'd done with the others. I picked up the burner phone and typed out a message. "I'm in. When do we start?" The response came back immediately. "Tomorrow. Derek Sterling's about to learn what happens when he picks on the wrong family." I deleted the message and went to the gym. I had a feeling I was going to need to be in fighting shape for what came next. 3 weeks later, Derek Sterling's world began to unravel. "Sterling," the woman said firmly, "leave, now." Derek looked around the room, seeing nothing but cold faces and closed expressions. His gaze finally settled on me, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been respect. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied, "it is." Derek grabbed his briefcase and stormed out, leaving the board to deliberate. I was asked to wait in the lobby while they discussed their decision. 20 minutes later, the steel-haired woman, I learned her name was Margaret Whitfield, and she owned 3 businesses in town, came down to deliver the verdict. "Mr. Patterson," she said, "the board has voted unanimously to terminate Derek Sterling's employment, effective immediately. We'll be conducting a full audit of all client accounts and implementing new oversight procedures." "What about the stolen money?" "That's a matter for law enforcement. We'll be filing a report with the district attorney tomorrow." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. "Thank you for listening." "Mr. Patterson," Margaret Whitfield's voice stopped me as I headed for the door. "I'm sorry about your marriage, but what you did tonight took courage. This community is better off without predators like Derek Sterling." I drove home through empty streets, past the gym where Frank had taught me that anger could be a tool or a weapon, past the bar where Sandra had first shown me the truth about Derek Sterling, past the house where Lisa and I had built a life that was now ending. My phone buzzed as I pulled into my driveway. A text from Lisa. "I heard what happened at the board meeting. Derek says you destroyed his life out of spite." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, Derek Sterling destroyed his own life. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Her response came quickly. The job in Chicago is gone. Derek says the agency is trying to scapegoat him. Derek Sterling is a predator who's been destroying marriages for years. You were just his latest victim. I wasn't a victim, Tom. I made my choice. Yes, I typed. You did. And now you get to live with the consequences. I turned off the phone and went inside. The house still felt empty, but it didn't feel hollow anymore. It felt like a place where I could start over, build something new, become someone better. Derek Sterling's career was over. His reputation was destroyed, his pattern of predatory behavior had been exposed, and he'd face criminal charges for the money he'd stolen. Lisa would have to figure out her own path forward, just like the other women Derek had manipulated and discarded. And I would go on, scarred but not broken, wiser but not bitter. Sometimes the good guys don't win. Sometimes they just make sure the bad guys lose. But sometimes that's enough. 6 months later, Derek Sterling pleaded guilty to embezzlement and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Lisa moved back in with her parents and eventually found work at a small marketing firm in the next town over. We finalized our divorce without drama or bitterness, just two people acknowledging that they'd grown into incompatible strangers. Sandra Morrison sold her house and moved to Florida, but not before establishing a foundation to help victims of workplace harassment and predatory behavior. And me? I kept working on cars, kept training at Frank's gym, and slowly rebuilt my life one day at a time. I never remarried, but I learned to be content with my own company.